How are you? Great. So, two buzzards sitting in a tree. What's the next line? You got it. K-I-S-S-I-N-G. Can you tell I have young kids? Okay. Two buzzards sitting in a tree. A fat, lazy buzzard and a younger, skinnier, hungrier vulture sitting in a tree. Sitting in the hot, hot, hot Arizona sun. Waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, the skinny, hungry vulture turns to the fat guy and says, wait for something to die? Hell, let's go out and kill something. Now, what I want you to understand is there's actually a reason for that story. And that's this. First of all, the networking lesson you need to learn from that is it's not considered a good thing to be a vulture when you're networking. That's the first thing. The second thing I want you to understand is this. You cannot wait for business to come out to you. You can't wait, okay? Now, you all know, and you heard Jerry talk a little bit earlier about I worked for Verizon Yellow Pages, superpages.com. And I had a customer that I met with on a regular basis, and he would say to me every time I met with him, Harry, the Yellow Pages don't work. They don't work. And we would talk, and we would talk, and he would continue to say, the Yellow Pages don't work. And indeed, if you looked at his ad there, I defy you to actually find his ad on that page. Can you see it? Well, of course you can't see it. And the reason for that is because it's way down in the corner on the bottom. You see it down there? I've circled it here in red. Hang on a second. See it now? You see his ad? Now, indeed, his Yellow Page program did not work. And it didn't work because if you look at the rest of the ads on that page, guess what? He can't compete. He's not being found on that page. And so there were two partners in this particular business. There was the fat, lazy partner, vulture, and there was a skinny, hungry vulture. So I sat down the first year with the first vulture, the fat, lazy vulture. I sat down with him and I said, listen, you need to have a much larger ad. You need to have an ad like that. And you know what he said? The Yellow Pages, Harry, don't work. I'm not going to do anything differently than what I'm already doing. So I sat down with him the first year, and that's what he said to me. The second year, I went back, and I put together a pretty good program for him, and guess what he said to me? He said, Harry, I'm not making any changes. My ad's fine. Everybody, blah, blah, blah. The Yellow Pages don't work anyway, so I'm not changing my program. Okay. So I had to go back the third year. And when I went back the third year, I got to meet with the skinny, hungry vulture. And I said to him, you know, you're paying $200 per month for that ad. $200. Now, I've reworked your program. I've gotten some co-op dollars. I've gotten this and I've gotten that. And indeed, you can now have that big ad. You can now have that for only 25 cents more than what you're currently paying. So $200.25 more, you can have that ad. That's it. So now I was talking to the skinny young vulture. What do you suppose he said? Yeah, he said, hey, sign me up. You know, that sounds like a great idea. And I did, and I was so thrilled because he was one of those accounts that just irked me that I couldn't get him to see the value in our program. So the young, hungry vulture, he signed off on it, and away we went. Just as the book went to press, I got a frantic phone call from the fat, lazy vulture, screaming at me because he had just gotten approved. How dare you change my program? Who authorized this? I don't want this. I want my regular ad. And unfortunately, there was nothing I could do. And so his ad ran as the big ad. I left Verizon that year, but it's funny because a couple of years back, I ran into him at a networking event right here. Now, he didn't recognize me. I looked a little bit different back then. But he didn't recognize me. But I talked to him, and I started talking a little bit, and I said to him, tell me something. How was business? And you know what he said to me? He goes, you know, in 2003, we had a banner year. He goes, I got to be honest with you, since then, business really sucks. Now, in 2003, by the way, what did he do different? His program ran. Now, he didn't tell me anything that I didn't know. But I went back and I looked at his program and what he was doing currently. And guess what? He's still doing that same little ad. So the 1 year his business was great, and now he's going back to doing that ad. But of course, it's because we're in a recession, right? It's of course because Buffalo, we're different. We haven't come out of the last 4 recessions that the country's come out of, right? The economy here is horrible. Taxes are too high. Oh, it's New York State. Oh, it's blah, 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 right? That's what we hear. But let me tell you another story. When I worked for Verizon, I went down to New York City right after September 11th. That's when right after that, as you recall, after the towers fell, the Verizon building was next to the Twin Towers, and it was damaged, and so they sent a whole crew of us down there to help out with those books. And my job was mostly to work with new customers, go out and bring in new customers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I had the pleasure of meeting an individual. His name was Dennis. Didn't have any advertising. We sat down and we talked. And I said to him, Dennis, if you're going to be effective and if you're going to do this, you've got to be found. You've got to compete under your headings in the yellow pages. You need to have an ad similar to this. And you know what he said to me? He said, okay, no problem. Now here's the difference. That ad, as you'll recall, in Western New York was $200, right? Remember that? But in New York City, that same ad was $1,000 per month. $12,000 per year. And you know what he said? Okay, sign me up. Not only did he sign the contract right then and there, but over the course of the next 3 months that I was down there, he introduced me to 30 individuals who all bought a similar program of roughly $1,000 more per month. So just as I was just as I was coming back from New York, I sat down, I took him to dinner. After all, I made a couple dollars off the man, right? So I took him to dinner. And we were talking, and I said, Dennis, got to be honest with you. In Western New York, where I come from, I have customers that are screaming because their program increased by 25 cents more per month. And yet, you just signed up for a $12,000 program like that just because I said it was going to work. What's up with that? And you know what he said? He said, listen to me, Harry. I'm in New York City. There are a million vultures out there, and if I don't do something different than everybody else, guess what they're going to do? They are going to eat me. I have got to be able to compete. Well, that's pretty interesting because, we are in a recession, so to speak. You've all heard it from your customers. You probably thought it yourself. We are in a recession. But if you listen to what Ivan says, Ivan talks about this. He says that in a recession, only the assertively networked individuals will survive in a recessionary economy. Do you know what that means? Assertively networked individuals. That means you, if you're doing it right. So let's talk about how you can do it right.